Yo YouTube! So I made a video on the Flydigi Vader 5 Pro, and first of all, appreciate all the likes and comments, shout out to y'all. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out my last video. But anyway, I wanted to make this video focusing on the Flydigi program, space station, and what you can actually do in it more specifically, what each option does so you can decide if it's worth changing based on your playstyle. I know there's a little question mark symbol on most of the options that explains what they do, but the goal of this video is to give a better, easy to understand explanation. Okay, so when you load up Space Station 4.0, you should see 5 sections in the middle: Common, Button, Joystick, Gyro, and Trigger. I'm gonna go through most of these pretty quick since a lot of it is self-explanatory. In Common, you can change the controller lights, adjust the brightness, and turn vibration on or off. Next is Button. This one's pretty simple. You just click on the button you want to change and map it to any other button on the controller. You can also map buttons to mouse and keyboard inputs like spacebar, scroll wheel, stuff like that. Moving on, you've got Joystick, but this is where it gets important, so I'm going to skip this for now because there's a bit more to explain. And then Gyro, nothing too crazy here. The controller does support Gyro, so this is basically where you just turn it on or off. As for Trigger, for some reason this one has a lot of options, but I guess this is for the immersion fiends. Anyway, you can choose whether you want vibration on the triggers, change the vibration intensity, and basically set a dead zone for how far you have to pull the trigger before the vibration kicks in. Now that everything's hopefully simplified, even though most of those were pretty self-explanatory, we can talk about the elephant in the room, the joystick. On Joystick, in the middle you should see sensitivity curve. To put it simply, sensitivity is how fast your camera moves overall, and sensitivity curve is how that speed ramps up when you move the stick. Most games that support controller already have their own curves in-game, so I recommend keeping this on default, which is linear, and then changing the curve in-game instead. That being said, let's see what the other options do. If you set your sensitivity curve to instant, it makes your stick super sensitive, and your overall sense will feel way faster than it already is. It'll also pick up tiny jitters or twitchy movements from your stick. Next is delay. Delay makes your stick feel really slow at first, so in theory it's great for micro-aiming, but once you do big stick movements, your sensitivity suddenly ramps up and gets fast. Last is custom, which is pretty straightforward. You just make your own curve. If you decide to mess around with these, I suggest going into your in-game settings first and setting the curve to linear, then come back to Space Station. That way you don't have one curve stacked on top of another curve. Moving on to Joystick Active Range. This one's real simple. It's basically your dead zones. I recommend keeping these at 0 and changing your dead zones in-game instead. I'm guessing this option is here for games that don't natively support controller or games with a trash dead zone system. In COD terms, the center is your min dead zone and the edge is your max dead zone. I'm going to assume if you're watching this and you've got a third-party controller like Flydigi, you already know what dead zones do, so I won't go super deep. But I will say, don't go below 0. I'm not even sure why that's an option, but if you do, your camera will just start drifting like crazy. Next, we got Circularity Algorithm. As you can see, there are 2 options: rectangle and circle. Rectangle gives you more of a square shape when you rotate the stick all the way around, which in my opinion can make your aim or camera speed feel kinda inconsistent in FPS games, especially when you hit the corners. Circle does the complete opposite. You get full consistency all the way around, which in my opinion makes it the best option for FPS games. With rectangle, the average error is usually around 11%, which is actually normal for this type of circularity algorithm. And by the way, most first-party controllers use rectangle. Moving on to circle, the average error is basically 0.00%, but sometimes you'll see 0.01%. All right, there's one more setting we gotta look at, but before that, if you made it this far in the video, you a GOAT. And also, anything I say is good or bad is just my personal opinion, so make sure you change these settings based on how you like to play. Looking at Joystick, on the bottom left you'll see click here. When you click that, it brings up the advanced settings. Honestly, some of the most important settings in here. Under Joystick Global Settings, you should see 3 options. Joystick debounce is basically a built-in filter. Since these sticks are magnetic, they can sometimes create noise or static in the center, which can cause stick drift. Turning this on filters that noise and helps remove drift. I personally keep this off because it gives me raw input data. Having a filter can mess with your micro-aim. The downside is you can't put your dead zones to 0, but honestly, that doesn't bother me. You can still keep them low. Most games I run like 2 or 3. Automatic calibration does pretty much what it says. It automatically calibrates where the center should be. I keep this off too because while I'm micro-aiming, the stick might think my tiny adjustments are static noise and recalibrate to center, which can mess up my aim. Rebounce algorithm determines how accurately the stick returns to center when you let go or move it back. It's kind of like calibration. Having this on controls how the stick springs back and how smooth or snappy that movement feels. I like raw input, so I also keep this option off. Next is accuracy. I spent the most time messing with this, and I honestly think this is the most important setting in the whole program. So lock in. Here you've got bit options ranging from 8-bit to 12-bit. Bit is basically like mouse DPI, but for controller. It's how many tiny stick positions the controller can detect. So 8-bit equals 256 stick positions, 9-bit equals 512, 10-bit equals 1024, 11-bit equals 2048, 12-bit equals 4096. The higher the bit, the smoother and more detailed your aim and movement will be. So you'd think maxing it out is a no-brainer, but it's actually not. If you set it to 12-bit, it can make aim assist feel like it's barely there. Aim assist works best when the game sees slightly imperfect, chunky analog movement. Most FPS games were designed around standard console controllers, which are basically 8-bit. Aim assist likes chunky stick input, and 12-bit makes your joystick super smooth and precise. So here are the pros and cons. Higher bit pros: super precise micro-aiming, smoother camera movement, great for gyro users, better target tracking, and it feels more mouse-like on controller. Higher bit cons: aim assist can feel weaker, slightly more processing, which can add tiny latency on wireless, less snap-to-target feeling, and flicking can feel harder. Lower bit pros: stronger aim assist feel, snappier movement, and less jitter. Lower bit cons: small aim adjustments feel chunky, harder to track heads at long range, harder to do pixel-perfect tracking, and diagonal movement isn't as smooth. I've spent a ton of time testing this, and right now I'm switching between 9 and 10-bit. I still get that sticky, icky aim assist, but my aim feels smoother and less chunky. If you want to maximize aim assist, go 8-bit. If you want the most raw and precise input, go 12-bit. Last really important setting is center sensitivity. Center sensitivity is how sensitive the stick is right near the middle, so tiny movements. To make it simple, think of it like a steering wheel. High center sensitivity means a tiny wheel movement makes the car turn a lot. Low center sensitivity means tiny wheel movement barely turns the car. Having it fast feels super responsive, but it can be shaky, also really good for flick shots. Putting center sensitivity on slow makes your aim more stable and less shaky, which is great for tracking. By default, it's set to medium, and honestly, that's probably the best for most people. But feel free to mess around and see what fits you. Personally, I change it depending on the game. For example, in Marvel Rivals, I like it on fast. For games like Call of Duty or Apex, I put it on slow. The last two settings are pretty simple. If you want a turbo function, you can turn it on, though I recommend only using that in story mode games. And if you want apps like Rewazd or Steam Input to overwrite your mappings, you can turn that on here too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully I was able to explain what each setting does in an easy-to-understand way. If you made it to the end of the video, I really appreciate it. If I missed something or you've got questions, drop them in the comments. And since you're down there already, do me a solid and hit that like and subscribe button.